Hey everybody, hope you're doing great today. It is, what is it? December 12th on the Morning Devo with Bo-O, and we are starting a new book today. I'm super stoked. And you could always check out the archives at my YouTube channel. Oh, there it is, Willette. It's right there. Whew. Just type in Willette in youtube.com. And I love doing that, by the way. I love trying to reach for that with my left hand because it's like therapy, you know? It's like, you're trying to put your arm in a position that just, doesn't want to go in. Oh, so it's like a barometer for me. I'm kind of testing to see how I'm doing. But anyway, the left arm is and shoulder and ribs are sore as ever. Boy, I tell you. At the beginning, when you get hurt, by the way, and I was in a motorcycle accident, but when you get hurt, it's like they give you, morphine and they're pumping you with stuff. You're in the trauma center and they're just giving you stuff. And so you got kind of like a week or 5 days of just stuff that they're giving you to deal with it. And then after that, you're on your own, man. It's like, you're stuck with ibuprofen or whatever it is. And then you have to just deal with it. Right. And so that's kind of tough. That's especially at night, man, when you're trying to get comfortable, and I haven't been able to lay down like in a bed. So I just kind of doing the chair thing. So welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo-O. Hope you guys are well. 9 o'clock on the button right now, December 12th. And we start a new book of the Bible, Daniel chapter 1 today. So, hey everybody, Craig, Paula, Michael, good to have you here. Tina, let's see, Laura, and did I say Patty already? She made me some great enchiladas. Hence the enchilada galore comment. So, yeah, that's been good. Trying not to gain weight while I'm on the down low. You know what I mean? That's a tough thing, too. So, okay, Daniel chapter 1. We finished Ezekiel. That's where the kind of destruction of Jerusalem was taking place and people were carted off to Babylon. Well, one of those guys who were carted off is a guy named Daniel. And we could see that some of these people were from good families, like as far as like prominent families. And there was 3 different takings, if you will, of the area of Judea, of Israel, meaning the southern part of Israel. And so 3 different times where Babylon comes in and takes people. And Daniel was in one of those captivities as well as Ezekiel. And for your further Bible study, you can look up when those things took place and all that. So, but for our kind of time together, we're just going to read through chapter 1 because that's kind of what I do in a devotion, is actually read the Bible. So instead of maybe reading a book about the Bible, and nothing's wrong with that. Those are cool. I have like Utmost for His Highest by Oswald Chambers, and there's different, devotions like that. But for me, I like just going through the Bible and just reading through it, every part of it, and every single chapter and passage and everything. And as you know, for those who have been with me, you kind of get some cool stuff in them, don't you? There is some good stuff in there. So it says, during the 3rd year of the reign of King Jehoiakim's in Judah, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon came to Jerusalem and besieged it. The Lord gave him the victory over Jehoiakim. And this was something that, Jeremiah talked about. Hey, just give up, man. Babylon's going to win. And they said, no, we're going to go to Egypt and we're going to have the Egyptians help us and all kinds of stuff. And Jeremiah was like, it ain't going to happen. But as always, we all listen to news networks. And some of those news networks, by the way, as it was in Jeremiah's day, weren't telling the truth. Whoa, what a concept, right? Maybe today, some of the what we call news isn't really news. It's actually some form of kind of propaganda of a particular viewpoint, trying to get something across, trying to move people, move the masses. And that happened in Jeremiah's day too. And so it says, the Lord gave him victory over Jehoiakim, allotted to Judah and Benjamin, except for the areas set aside for the sacred lands and the city. These are the territories allotted to the... I jumped right to Ezekiel in my Bible. Sorry, it says, the Lord gave him victory over Jehoiakim of Judah and permitted him to take some of the sacred objects from the temple of God. So Nebuchadnezzar took them back to the land of Babylonia and placed them in the treasures house of God. You can remember that time where in the book of Jeremiah, I think it was, where Jeremiah says, "Hey, what did that convoy of the Babylonians want?" And they wanted to look at all the treasury, the treasures of the temple, and so we showed them. And Jeremiah was like, "What? Like, well, the Lord says that they're going to come one day and take it." And so that's what's being reported here. So they come in and they take the treasures from the house of the Lord. And it says, then the king ordered Ahasaphanaz, his chief on staff, to bring to his palace some of the young men of Judah's royal family and other noble families who had been brought to Babylon as captives. Okay, so the list of people that we're going to get are from noble families, maybe politician families, that kind of thing. Just people in kind of the government world, I guess. And it says, select only strong, healthy, and good-looking young men, he said. Make sure they are well-versed in every branch of learning, are gifted with knowledge and good judgment, and are suited to serve in the royal palace. Train these young men in the language of the literature of Babylon. The king assigned them a daily ration of food and wine from his own kitchens, and were to be trained for 3 years, and they would enter the royal service. Okay, so they were going to go to, if you will, the University of Babylon. That's kind of what has happened. Hey, give them a scholarship. Those that seem to be, in the upper crust, that seem to be, well-versed, well-understanding, good-looking people, put them ahead of the game. Get them into the university and get them going. Now, in today's world, we would say, man, that's prejudice. You can't be doing that. That's wrong. You can't just take people that are from the more wealthy part of the tracks and the good-looking people, the people that look right and got their hair right and everything looks fashionable and they're all already learned really well. And you can't just jump them ahead of the track, In today's world, someone would have stopped Nebuchadnezzar and said, "Yo, Nebi, that's wrong, brother. You can't be doing that. That's like totally against the grain, man. You can't be just letting people go. That's not good. That's, man, you have to work on your intersectionality and whatever it is. What you just did was a microaggression, Nebuchadnezzar." And today we kind of have a flow in a way about us where we're much more cognitive, actually aware of actually treating people equally. And that's kind of what we, think about, a lot in our world. I grew up listening to a ton of reggae. I always remember Peter Tosh, the guitar player for Bob Marley, when he broke away from Bob Marley and the Wailers and just became Peter Tosh. He wrote a song, Equal Rights and Justice, right? Yeah, equal rights and justice. And we used to sing that song, going surfing and stuff like that. But the idea was that it doesn't matter kind of who you are, you deserve, you should get an opportunity to go to that university, no matter what's going on, no matter who you are, that there should be some kind of opportunity. Just because your parents, you were born on the wrong side of the tracks per se, you were born in that neighborhood, doesn't necessarily mean that you can never get a shot at, going to that university. And so, that kind of idea, that's not how it was in Babylon, just so you know. And that's not how it was in, I would say, probably all of the world back then or even now. A lot of times, most people that are from wealthy families and a wealthy tradition usually have a little more, if you will, opportunity than the person who's not. And that's, I think that's one of the basic facts of life that we understand. Now, this kind of way of thinking, though, that Nebuchadnezzar has, sometimes gets into kind of your spiritual life. And you start thinking like, oh man, gosh, it's, man, I'm blessed, I'm blessed, I'm blessed. They're not blessed, I'm blessed. And you start kind of looking at people in this interesting way. And I don't know if you've ever done that before, where people that have the privilege and have this extra opportunity, because of their background, they call themselves blessed. And they think of other people that don't have that particular opportunity as somehow not blessed or not favored by God or not loved by God. It could even get to that place. So you have stories in the Bible by Jesus, the rich man and Lazarus, right? Where one of them's poor, obviously Lazarus, and he begs at the rich man's gate for just some food. And the rich man just goes, nope, not going to give it to you. Why? Because that dude's obviously not blessed. Look at him. Poor and a beggar. Yet the rich man doesn't have any compassion and doesn't understand that poor man is actually someone who is favored by God. But you don't see it until the afterlife, where the rich man is not favored and the poor person is. That's interesting too. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody who's rich isn't favored. It doesn't mean everybody who's poor is favored. But what Jesus was getting at is you need to be careful of how you are perceiving God and you. I need to be how do I perceive God? And how do I perceive me? Do I realize that a lot of what I have and what I call a blessing has been things that, do I really realize that so much has been given to me? That there's been opportunities that I've had, and I'm on the back of many shoulders, meaning a lot of people have carried me. And that's the blessing. And that's the thing to be thankful for. But not get to this place where I think, oh, those other people certainly aren't. They're not so blessed. That kind of idea. Jesus had to really squash that. Because people in his day, the religious people of his day, got it wrong. I mean, they just literally got it spiritually wrong. And they somehow became these spiritual prejudiced people. Where if you didn't come from the background of these young men, then you were somehow not worthy, not favored by the Almighty. It was only these people. God can use rich people. God can use people from prominent families. And God's grace is also on people that are come from lowly places as well. But we know that to get into the kingdom of heaven, you must be poor in spirit. For everybody. Doesn't matter if you're rich, doesn't matter if you're poor. To get in, you must have a humble heart, right? Not a proud heart, but a humble heart. So, all that said, you see that Nebuchadnezzar is saying, hey, I want in my government, quote, the best of the best. And so, I'm going to put them into the university. And so it says Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah were the 4 young men chosen from all the tribe of Judah. Now, this is amazing, too, because it's all the whole tribe of Judah, man. Just these 4 were chosen. Hey, they got special, treatment. Why not me? Kind of thing. Only 4, right? So these people really stood out. They must have been amazingly good looking. I mean, you must have looked at these dudes and just been like, that is a handsome, handsome dude, And, I'm from Southern California, man. I mean, we're not afraid to say, hey, that person's very attractive. It doesn't mean we want to be with them or nothing like that, but just admitting that they're good looking people, And so we can do that today, by the way. Today I can understand that someone's good looking, but I don't need to lust after them. Does that make sense? Yeah, you can notice there's beauty, but we don't have to go into the realm of lust. And that's something to be praying about. God, help me to see things right. There are people that are good looking. To say no to that is to say no to something that is not true. When there is objective beauty, if something's beautiful, it's beautiful, and you don't have victory over it or do the right thing over it by saying no, 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 no. Repressing something that is true. No, we state the obvious. Someone's beautiful. But then we also say, Lord, let me see them in the proper way. That's kind of how we go about that. These people were beautiful. They were amazing. If we saw them, we'd be like, wow. Okay? So yeah, there's beautiful people in the Bible. That's true. The chief on staff renamed them these Babylonian names. Daniel was called Belteshazzar. Hananiah was called Shadrach. Mishael was called Meshach. And Azariah was called Abednego. But Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating food and wine given to them by the king. He asked the chief of staff for permission not to eat the unacceptable foods. Now God had given the chief of staff both respect and affection for Daniel. But he responded, I am afraid of my lord the king, who has ordered you to eat his food and wine. If you become pale and thin compared to your other youth of your age, I'm afraid the king will have me beheaded. So here you see a lot of things going on, and I love that it taps into the emotion, too, of it all. There's a lot of fear going on, and fear moves us in many ways. Fear of people. Man, I fear the king, so my answer is going to be no. How many times do I do that? How many times do I say no out of fear? I'm just afraid, right? I'm afraid of what is going to happen. What is going to happen particularly to me? I'll get out of my comfort, right? Out of what I like to do. And when we humans aren't, in a sense, in a comfortable place, we don't feel like we're comfortable, then, we get squirrely. We try to control. We try to manipulate everything to get back to some sense of what we call resemblance. That must have been interesting hanging out with Jesus, because Jesus kind of just walked around and, kind of a little unpredictable too. And so, I don't know if and you probably had to deal with your fear in a lot of ways with Jesus. The cool thing was that you were with Jesus, but the gnarly thing was you were with Jesus. And when you're with Jesus, man, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if the army of Rome's going to be upset at you. You don't know if the Pharisees and the Sanhedrin, the religious council, is going to be upset at you. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know if people are going to chuck rocks at you, want to push you off a cliff, arrest you. I mean, it can get crazy, right? But yet Jesus is safe and he's awesome. And you're trusting that his power is greater than everything against you. And that's what we have to do. We have to trust that the power of God is bigger than all of our kind of things we can't control and being uncomfortable. This person who worked for the king said, hey, I fear the king. And therefore I'm going to say, no, Daniel, you can't be eating what you want to eat. And so you see in my heart, I have that fear. And that fear of individuals moves me a particular way. And so you got to think about your life too. What fear of people moves you in a particular way? Why does it move you? Does it move you in a good way, or does it move you in a not so good way? And so Daniel's told no when it comes to eating the food of the king. Daniel had obviously a regimen in mind, a certain type of diet as a Jewish young man, and maybe used to going through different times of dedication, taking different kind of diets with him in his devotion to the Lord. Jewish people had that where they can do like a Nazirite vow and kind of not eat from the fruit of the vine. So no wine and different things like that, where wine was very customary, very much a part of their world. And so anyway, we see Daniel spoke with the attendant who had been appointed by the chief of staff to look after Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and said, "Please test us for 10 days on the diet of vegetables and water." Daniel said, "At the end of 10 days, see how we look compared to the other young men who are eating the king's food." Now, what would we look like if we just had vegetables and water for 10 days? I mean, what if we went on a massive Devo with Bo-O diet, where we just said, let's do vegetables and water for 10 days and see what happens? Man, I bet you we would drop some poundage, It just doesn't seem like eating a lot of vegetables and water is going to do much to the system. Doesn't sound like a lot of protein there. But here, Daniel, this is what he says. And it seems pretty miraculous, really, if this is going to work out. And Daniel says, at the end of the 10 days, see how we look compared to the other men who are eating the king's food, and then make your decision in light of what you see. The attendant agreed with Daniel's suggestion and tested them for 10 days. You want to try something for 10 days. See how it is. So you go, oh yeah, that worked out good. Oh, that didn't work out good. Seems like 10 days is a good thing to kind of maybe run a little test on. And so Daniel says, hey, you know what? I'm gonna eat the way that we want to eat, and give us 10 days and just see how we're doing. And I love that. He doesn't come off real cocky, does he? Daniel doesn't come off of like, I'm gonna eat veggies and water and you better and da-da-da-da-da. He says, hey, just give it 10 days, man. And I love that. Maybe Daniel was sensitive to this dude's fear of the king. He knows how this guy's talking to Daniel. He knows how he's talking to him. And he says, man, I could tell this guy has a lot of fear of us, not looking right and him being responsible. And so Daniel is sensitive, it seems like, and says, hey, for 10 days, why don't you give us 10 days and then see how we look. How about that? And I find that really sensitive, compassionate, very relational. Are you in that way, and am I in that way, thinking of other people and kind of their predicaments? Like, what's their predicament? And am I sensitive to that? Understanding, like, man, I understand why they're acting this way. When you learn about people's lives, you should be able to understand why they're doing what they're doing, why they do what they do. And you can be sensitive to that decision. So you don't just go into someone's life and say, blah, 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 blah. You should do this. You should stop doing that. You should do it. Because you don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. You might not. They might be doing what they're doing for a very good reason. And it's something that's beautiful on their heart. And you just don't know it. So you talk in a not a sensitive way. And you're not being very sensitive with that person. And that person, maybe people don't like, maybe have you had people in your life that have you found a pattern in your life where people don't like to be around you or they struggle with you? And if you have that in your life where people struggle talking to you, it could be that you're not like Daniel, that you're not very sensitive or aware or in tune with why people are doing what they do. Instead, you're talking out of turn. You're jumping the gun. Where sometimes people do what they do for very good reasons. And sometimes those reasons might not be the most noble of reasons, but they are good reasons. This person had a ton of fear for the king. Daniel didn't go, hey, you shouldn't have, fear for the king, man. Why are you having fear? Like, why are you living out of fear? That's just not good. You really need to stop living out of fear And you need to live out of faith. And if you stop living out of fear, then you'll live out of faith. Do you get what I'm saying? I mean, do you get that? Where Daniel could have come off that way. But he realizes the predicament of the king's official. And he comes to him and says, 10 days. 10 days. Give me 10 days. He understands that there's an issue here. Do I? Do I understand the issue with people? Or do I just bleh? Do I just have the vomit, right? Man, I really can learn a lot from Daniel in this book and just on our behavior. So, yeah, faith over fear. And it's interesting that Daniel doesn't go that route with this guy. He doesn't say to him, hey, you got to have faith instead of fear. Instead, he understands where he's at. That's what I find so fascinating. And Daniel, and maybe why God exalted Daniel to a certain position, because he could work with people. He knew how to deal with people. He knew how to listen to people and not react harshly. See, sometimes when we say things, we don't realize that we're just being kind of harsh. Yeah, and that's tough. But, we see it in Jesus's day where so many of the religious people thought that they were saying the right thing, but they weren't. And so I got to look at myself too and just go, hey, is there mercy in my heart for people? Do I have mercy on people where I can say, hey, I understand what you're going through. And I can understand why you're reacting out of fear. And I can understand why you're not in faith. I can understand why you're trying to manipulate. I can understand why you're trying to coerce. It's not that it's right, but I understand it. And now let's move into maybe a deeper conversation about that. Maybe next time we can talk a little more, So Daniel does this 10 days test. He understands the fear that this guy's dealing with. The attendant, of course, agrees. He goes, man, I could do this. Isn't that cool? He meets this guy right where he's at. He gives him something where the guy could say, yeah, okay, let's do that. I'll meet you there, Daniel. And so at the end of 10 days, Daniel and his 3 friends looked healthier and better nourished than the young man who had been eating the food assigned by the king. So after that, the attendant fed them only vegetables instead of food and wine provided by the others. So after the 10 days, we see that everything seems to be going good. And so how is this going to react to the official of the king? He's going to go, hey, man, this is going well. I think I can go more in this direction. And I love that. Daniel gives him the test, says, hey, in 10 days, he doesn't just jump on him because he's acting out of fear. He doesn't just go off on him and say, oh, man, I see your flaws, that you're a fearful person, and blah, 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 if you just had faith. He doesn't go in that direction at all. He understands that he's just a person like every human being on this planet that has ever lived that deals and struggles with fear gone astray. That's right. Your fear goes astray. And when your instinct of fear goes astray, you and I, we try to do everything to compensate. We say things, we do things to try to control and make it to feel good and everything like that. We can call it all we want faith, but it's not, right? It's just, it's trying to manipulate our life, Really trusting in the sovereign Lord. God, help me to deal with my fear. A lot of the things in the Psalms are like that. Let me give you my fear, God. So Daniel does this beautiful act of testing, and he gives the opportunity for that official to see the work of God. Isn't that cool? He gives them an opportunity to see a work of God. I love that. He gives them an opportunity to see a work of God. Do I give people an opportunity to see a work of God? Or do I just shut down all conversation in the first go around? Or do I make allowance? Is there any kind of tolerance in my heart for people so that I can maybe, just maybe, they will see the work of God in me? But it ain't going to happen if I don't have any tolerance when I walk outside. It's just not going to happen. I grew up hearing 3 words a lot: patience, tolerance, and understanding. Those things were drilled into my mind as a teenager in Alcoholics Anonymous. Patience, tolerance, and understanding. Was I living that way? Was I really being tolerant, patient? Not excusing things. We're not talking about that. But we're wanting to be like Daniel, to be that person who has to have some tolerance for Babylonian culture, Babylonian society, everything like that. He can't just shut it down. He can't just say, no, don't change my name. I'm not going to live by that name. No. That's not the Hebrew name that I was given. He doesn't just go that route. There's some tolerance there so that the glory of God could be seen, so that he gives way to an opportunity to see God move. Man, that's cool. There's some real nuance there, man, in Daniel's life and in his behavior that we can really learn from. Yeah. And it says at the end of the 10 days, I already read that. Everything looked good. They look great. So verse 17, God gave these 4 men unusual aptitude for understanding every aspect of literature and wisdom. And God gave Daniel the special ability to interpret the meaning of visions and dreams. So we see that God's hand is on these young lads, and they are, in a sense, anointed by God. They have incredible ability to learn. And some people that I know have this. They can read and they can retain. And man, it is unbelievable. And you just go, wow, God's really given them this kind of aptitude for this kind of learning. And so these guys had it. Daniel also has this interpretation gift from God. And it says, and notice they're from God. They're not from them. They're from God. And it says, when the training period ordered by the king was completed, the chief of staff brought all the young men to King Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and no one impressed him as much as Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they entered the royal service, and whenever the king consulted them in any matter requiring wisdom and balanced judgment, he found them 10 times more capable than any of the magicians and enchanters in his entire kingdom. Daniel remained in the royal service until the first year of the reign of King Cyrus. Okay, so Daniel serves for a long period of time in the royal service, and we're going to see kind of how that plays out in the book. But I love this last paragraph that the king is impressed. Through the way Daniel acts gives opportunity for not just the official to see the work of God in their life, but also who? The king. Isn't that cool? Yeah, and there had to be a lot of patience and understanding with these young people, and a lot of tolerance to put up with the ways of Babylon. You and I, don't we have to put up a lot with the ways of Babylon? Don't we have to be, patient out there with people? Don't we have to have some understanding of kind of what's going on in their life? Why do people do what they do? What are people scared of? Why do people talk to you the way they talk to you? Maybe it's their background. Maybe the way they were treated. Maybe it is from kind of where they're from. Maybe they aren't educated that well. Maybe they didn't have an opportunity to go to university. And maybe they'd never, darkened the door of a college or even a high school. Maybe they don't know how to get started. Maybe everybody in their life has been harsh and no one's given grace or mercy. I always used to hear a phrase too, pets are products of their environment and people are too. And I always like that. Pets are products of their environment. Why is that dog mean? Why is that dog so jacked? Why is he so aggressive? Maybe it's because the dog's neglected. Maybe the dog has been kicked and beat. And he ain't happy. And that's why that dog acts that way. Just maybe it's some of that. It's not all genetics. Maybe it's some genetics, and then it's partially just how the dog's been treated. And maybe that's how people are too. Just as pets are products of their environment, people are too. So, do I have patience? Can I tolerate? Understand how someone's been hurt, especially in your family. Do you understand I understand as a husband what's happened to my wife, maybe what her life has been like, the difficulties in her life, and maybe how that stuff weighs on her heart. Does that come into play in my heart when we're having a discussion? Do I understand that could be how she's looking at things, her lens? Or do I just ignore that and just go, no, that's not what the Bible says? Do I just kind of go that direction? Instead of going, I understand, I'm going to have some tolerance here. And to have compassion. So I can understand those type of things. Daniel did that so good that the relationships just kept going and going and going to where the work of Christ, and that is it, it's the work of Messiah in them, is seen by those people that they're in relationship with. Man, and they had to be in relationship with them. They were, in a sense, put in this position. And so some of us, we have a job. We're in that position. We're around those people. Do you have patience, tolerance, and understanding around them? Do you give way? Do you give opportunity for the work of God to touch them through your love, through your compassion, through your patience and self-control, right? Your faithfulness, all those things, the fruits of the Spirit. So, man, Daniel, a really cool guy. Now, you might have gone through chapter 1 a lot, but you've never quite touched on it maybe quite like that in the Devo, right? Really looking at his behavior, seeing how what he did, how he moved, how he thought, those kind of things, how it influenced, and brought about the opportunity of God to do a work. We're going to see some amazing stuff in the book. It's one of the most amazing prophetic books in our Bible. And these guys are hanging out with a bunch of pagans. So go figure that one, right? Where sin abounds, what abounds all the more? Where sin abounds, grace abounds all the more. You guys got it. Okay, we'll talk to you later.